Okay. Okay. Did everybody hear that? It's the only I'm the one. Oh, okay.
Yes, Rinpoche.
I should be more careful now. Okay. Now I will speak in the Tibetan. It is more for me. It's more comfortable. 당한 계산 기부 충을 거대. 다 도움도 지야비나. 다 기부 충을 것도 계시주디 미다보고 맞송고요래. 아니 타과도 미다보고 매디. 아니 세딜이야. 나신 도베치도 미다보고 맞송고요래. 델이야 다 지기 세디 르동야기 쳐도 세디 지구를 삼았다는데야지. 세디를 삼아만한스기요 말에. 세디 지구를 삼았다네. 아니 디코란을 신차게 돼야지. 용당야. 디 매버스에 쳐도 아니 지원에다 보고 손에들 리도와. 다 대잠식이 기부 중에 주고 차상을 없으나 말에. 디가라 가르송다. 집에서 최마도 신기 펜토고요 말에 세디. 다 딩아주 초티어원 기원도 다 미답이 주고 개치셔도 다 되나를 하는 거야. 갈라도서도 다 레준제티. 하바도 레준제 단다 송야디 아니 하바도 단다가 주 녀손을 지그레 세치. 다 야고지 마치나 녀손을 깨비지나 아니 땡상 보지 마토베이나 아니 동행 시비지 연구를 세 딜이야 아니 셈디 타래야 치도래. 다단다 타르바요 말봐. 어디 인도 잠베 아니 개치셔디 레준제를 뭔가 머리바 세 딜이야 님부지 때 고주 쪽으로 가. 그도다 님부게 땡겨요 말이데. 안데네 니버데 지난주 공부시에 지다. 아니 다음에 통세디 기부 능력을 송고요데 이는 기부 충으로 디단 초 충비 네 다음에 공단치 빼나 미다바 공세디 막 과르 때지기 치워 미다바레 과 차르 당도 준비 아니 균세디 계시는 거가 당아란도 상물로 아니 카상기 미디 드링기 미디 말이 원아 아니 카상기 미디 라고도 왔어야지 가를 라고요서는 이 균을 신데 균을 땡지 아니 계시고 말이 세치 다 디게 레온도 잠베 다 등진 다 딱버려 잠베 등진 고아지 디날레요 등진 기 삼로진 안줄로 여버티 남샤견도 카상기 미디 아주 드림이 인차샤 삼로당 데디 딜레 땡지 아주게 아니 그치 차담모서 뭐 시켜요 해야지 네 용으로 동야게 탑라 아니 신이 균을 땜비미다 봐세도 고가지 레토버디 기부 충을 겁선에 하고 토비주 쇠고 유스래 디말레베이나 아니 가르서 그래 지가서 그래 아주 디네마 치마른 로니도 술에 있을도 저거당은 되잖아 아니 말에 세도 잠베 아주 아트마 세기 계제디 다 소울 세 계제디 다 디리 켈렌로 치고요래 디인도 잠베 로트바 치부시지 레로 치고요래 다디인도 잠베 디네마 치마른 로니디 가르제 술에 세도 잠베 니기 균삼신도 요래 세지 다른 게 가디 마치마르로 요 말이지 딘데직 삼로 야고 코르토베나 레준들 이제지다 개와 마치리아 이질레 토야지 용구요서리 디 남주 세부도 그저께요 말이 다들은 예전한조 공부시 공부 코르토에 직체도 니디슈요
So when we left off yesterday, we were covering the being of the smaller capacity, and in relation to that, we covered one of the primary topics in relation to the being of the smaller capacity is that of meditating on impermanence, and you know that helps in reducing that helps us to reduce the attachments to the kind of appearances or wonders of this life. But also we need to, in order to, as we try to reduce our attachment to thinking only about this life, of course, there's these meditations on death and impermanence, but that's not really, even in relation to a being of the small scope, that's not really complete, just thinking about death and impermanence, but particularly the aspect that we brought in yesterday, that at the time of death, it is only the Dharma that will help us. And that's another important aspect. And then again, on top of that, the contemplation of the law of karmic cause and effect, and that if we this sense that if we were to be born into a lower realm and we were not able to attain a kind of a positive support, which means literally the kind of the aggregates, a positive set of aggregates if we're born into a lower state instead of a pleasant place, then this sense that we were going to suffer greatly. And so that draws in, we need to find for ourselves an antidote to the ignorance which is specifically in relation to the law of karmic cause and effect. And even though and then again related to all of those, even though we talk about selflessness really only in relation to a being of the middling capacity, but actually we need to bring a sort of some sense of that again down into the being of the smaller capacity. And when we're talking about, because also when we're talking about impermanence, meditation, contemplation on impermanence or death, and particularly in relation to impermanence, what we're talking about, there's a lot of discussion about the continuum of a being. And so, in our kind of sort of, what's the word, sort of normal perspective, we actually think of yesterday's person as remaining into the next day, but actually, it's very clearly stated that there's, it's very clearly stated that the yesterday's person is not the person of tomorrow, or yesterday's person was not today's person is not tomorrow's person, and so we have to find a way of positing a sort of presentation of how the person continues, the continuity of the person, and that sense that yesterday's person, that sort of innate sense of ours that yesterday's person is in fact today's person, is the kind of grasping at permanence, but we need a way to sort of be able to posit what is. So how does because this is engaging now with the topic of Atman, of the kind of Atman or non-Atman, and so this is how the sort of the sense of selflessness also finds its way into this meditation. So if we're trying to find who is it that continues from yesterday, today to tomorrow, and that grasping, which thinks that they're the same thing, is that grasping at the permanence is the thing that then out of which stems a whole range of negative emotions, attachment, anger, and ignorance. And of course, we have to work on reducing those. And so who we're asking, who is going into the future? And we don't accept a soul or an Atman or a soul that goes into the future, but we have to accept that there's a person, that there's a continuity of relationship between the person of today and the person in the future. And this, of course, so when we're contemplating the law of karmic cause and effect, and also because this topic of the continuum then brings in the law of karmic cause and effect, and also past and future lives, and although it's not because of the Dameki Namsha the this Kegongo there. The Dameki Namsha Chazama the Keongo Mari is in the Chadawa Chegong. So this at this stage, we're sort of not bringing in the full explanation of selflessness, but we're bringing in a sort of, a part of it, a kind of a little bit of an essence of it, in when we're talking about continuum and then past and future lives, the continuum in relation to past and future lives and the law of karmic cause and effect.
Bodhichitta. Tatene, Dibhado Tango Kibu Chung de Sha, that you would ding the summer stamina. That you would drink Tom to Yan, you would ding Naloria, lay somewhat of the soul day. That Jiggy one to some shit toba in a young. One do Hami Koban, Alla Havado Jiggy so made the Delia, and Javalan, there was some Shigea, and it's Jiggy Karsore. Jiggy Susuki, the way on Zoma Twitch. Jumzen Kares Lavina, and that is somebody not rolling, Yavado. Any Chabat to Jig to me, say, to somebody led to a old one. The Indians and Meta, Dunga the Digi, Pena, Yasongi Dunga singing the neck of the Tarwa in a young, and Jig Mondo Hamikoban top Jideva in a young, the young temple medus. Gurbi Dunga said, that somebody around the Gurbi Dunga said, Kadu Rapajil Samatambina, Tirinki, send you me of Chavita Gurbi singers from Rishi. In a Gurbi Dunga, the doors, Jig some structure Dambaina, and Mondo Hamikoban top in a young. Tempo Camidus, so logodus, Cavalosuna, Yan Dungichimani, the Guru Dunga, the Dungi Dungi, Tabadoya, Yansong Dunga, the two logodus. They never gentlewich. Or they never the average and gentlewina. And this Shine Sambanarola. Ta Koala Kitchinje, then Lenu Shaman Jingi, but Zuzu said Karigan towards it. 아주 풍부들이야. 제장하는 쪽이 차바 누지 동의 친시 약쇼리 아주 사진이 원래 풍부된 거 지도와 사진이 원래 홍보세도 인지면 이제 샤도 로고기 좀 말해. 아주 상당당 두시 나버셔봐 두시 풍부 아니 풍부가 경고 저래저래진 저 상말로 콜라 사제단 제별 톤에 레벨 업데라 남의 기분인 것 같았어. 내가 기분이 좋았어. 이나야 애도 기분 좋네. 영야요 말에 김생 가르쳤으나 레뉴 심한진비 just 따디 김생이 그거요. 아주 레다 용봉기 심한진 그도도 때딜라 심한세게 식디기 라완치에 매버디 세워진 라트거지. 라완치에 메두스 레다 용봉기 심한진을 샤 세드 삼을 코온도 전에 Rangshingi semna lola ya, ta leda nyumoni goyagi samlo diletuichita. Odi sotubina, and shine give dingna lola ta, competitor ta shine.
And so that's we discussed quite a lot yesterday and a little bit more today about that's the up to here we've discussed the being of the smaller capacity, and now we move on to the being of the middle capacity and discuss what are the main kind of things to contemplate, to meditate on when for a being of the middling capacity. And so we in the lower capacity, we're thinking really only of trying to get some form of higher, to avoid rebirth in the lower states and to get to attain higher rebirth in the higher states. And so the higher states being, realms such as the God realm, the human realm, the form and formless realms. But if that's all we kind of focus on, if that's all we kind of aim for, then actually our own desires and wishes are not actually complete. It's because this then touches on the forms of suffering, in particular the pervasive, the pervasive conditioned suffering. So being released from freedom from the lower realms and being able to be reborn in the high realms is not a stable condition. So there's always that, sometimes when we think about the suffering of change, we think of today, we think of it in a very gross level that, oh, today I'm happy, but, it'll change and I won't be happy later on. There is a sense of that, in the sense that the freedom from if we attain a higher rebirth, then freedom from the lower rebirth and birth in a higher rebirth, in some sense, has a little bit, higher form of happiness to it, but it's not stable. So the way that we need to remember the suffering of change is that, in relation to this, is that there's even when we've attained higher rebirth, we will. It's unstable, and at some point we're going to have to return. We will fall from those higher states of rebirth and into lower states, and we need a very very clear ascertainment of this, that something very definitive ascertainment that this is the case. Now, and also we need to bring in the perspective of the pervasive conditioned suffering. And what does that mean? That means that taking birth under the sway of karma and mental afflictions. And usually what we do when we're asked to posit an example, an example of the all-pervasive conditioned suffering, we usually say the 5 aggregates, which is correct. That's a very kind of neat example that we give, but also we shouldn't just think of them all together as the 5 aggregates. We also should think of each individually. So our discriminations, our consciousness, the way we think, not just thinking in the sense like the physical aggregate, something like that, but thinking of each. We should think of the way in which each one of them individually is also under the sway of the process, under the sway of the power of karma and mental affliction, and therefore there is no, we have no freedom. They are always they are always contaminated. They're always the causes of them are contaminated, and so they will only. It is possible in that process to have a kind of temporary, short-term happy state, but in the long term, that's not possible. And the karma and mental afflictions drives this process of pervasive conditioning, and then we have no. There's no, because we're under the sway of those, we have no autonomy. There's no how to say, we're under the sway of them. We're not under our own control, and so we need to be able to cease that process of birth driven by karma and mental afflictions.
Here I wanted to share your story about my predecessor. I don't know my predecessor or not. So, and Serkong Rinpoche, the original one, the real one. So he visited Paris, and then his beneficiaries, the students, take him to the Eiffel Tower, and then they request, they bought a ticket to Rinpoche to go on the top of the Eiffel Tower. Then Rinpoche refused, and then Rinpoche said, "Now old, I know the meaning that I go up, then what you do is come down. So this is not fun. I know it very well. So you people, you need fun, you go. I will sit here and do my sadhana." So some took like Rinpoche is being very lazy. He came all the way to Paris, and in the front of Eiffel Tower, he said he didn't go up. So some of the students thought like that, but there's one student who took quite a teaching, so that's his good job for him. So he took the teaching of the middle scope. So that's what I just explained. 제가 차바두지 동의했어. 가와를 더베 이나야. 아니 사제 녀월에 몇 풍부 질량서 쇼라. 아니 탈사요 말했어. 동의기는 신신 직차대도 단단 내급 기부 여be 있나야. 아니 땡도 기부 제대 자원이 연구 말했어. 제제. 다디기 고와디 렘비 고와디 하고 렘비 시도니 단다 루주디 시고에 직다. 다 되는 개체슈디 단다 시딩기 나로고 물로도기 아니 가서 아니 아주 사진이 원래 공부를야 동의기네 손이 봐 동의기네 네 이제
알아요. 맞아요.
어디 동의기네 생문신 지나 되네 남전 나로래야 들야민 다운도 준비 아니 녀비 땡쳐봐 동의기 땡쳐봐 땡쳐봐 아딩문에 구주 숙침부 십지래 제상가 땡 라율이야래 뒤네 동의기 땡침에 풍부 열었어 가지고 다 루트 보고 열에 마 미율레네체 미율나로다 땅 란주 저기 밀리니어 손으로 지금 아주 남지 지수이란 제대하게 다 들은 거 셀리브리티스 간대지네 두고도 쓰나 다디 아주 체면 루트 가지고 열어 대중소나 동의기 땡 여잔 단대 기부 열을 때 땡도 기부세도 자원이 용어 말해서 아주 다 쳐도 지금 아주 여기 랩토고도 저장 캬바세티 캬바세티 캬바도 지금 동네를 캬바세티 어디 놓고도 제도나 안 되고 안 줄어야 가리캡상 열에서도 다 기부 중요에 가서 딜라 세딜라야 아니 시블록 세죠 세딜로 셈로바 세티 디나신 다 콜라야 심발로 세디 콜라 심발로 언제 좀 미들 가르치고 그러서는 인중세 인중 말다 인중세티 오 인중세가 삼로됐다 신이 안줄 셈나로다 알려줘야지 던제디 야고질래 토바이나 다 단도양 인중 신이 상가지만 주 루투고 유매자 이 루투고 요 말에 가르치는서나 디기 셈그 술이야 다 타르바 되니 로들레 유르단다 타른데그 삼바요레 이네 타르방은 짐투요 말에 타른데그 삼바요레 땅을 좀 마시네 디리르비지 베나 제르미치기 람름 치면 알아야 아니 베 민낙친 말하는 feeling 디 간디르비치려서나 딱 꼬마 이제 작업 나신지 아니 다 criminal 쉬지기 답에 퀄리티 여데 디간라다 콜야다 산이코 산이 슈게 추주 숨바 시버도 발고 아니 코 세야레다 슬람나 되네 코 셈나로 딱직 타르주 중아 삼야게 셈나로 슉처를 두고 봐
다들 중나
정관되는 탈랑 삼야게 삼로도 슉 묻혀 아주 슉 어디 이렇게 중배 나서 그렇다 탄도 슉 치부지 중다 여다 따딜이야 아주 마순에 타르바트니 세데 틀레 연구요. 또 단단 얘를 얘기 인중세 상로들 탄도요 말에 순환도요. 제가 그 순환제도요. 코델이 샴발로가 되고 좀 싫어.
그리 순환세르베
순부세도다 지루와 제 칼사난다.
disgust로.
잘봐.
네.
탄도요 상바지 딱 디베지 타리아 주나 삼야게 삼로데다 콜 홉지 통고요레 제가 정관한 데니 메질라 다 사니 차란레 야디 홉지 도스라베이나 딱 가랑 포커스 두고 봐 어디로 나신지다 탐도게 삼바 세데 니버들이 탐도게 삼바 레벨라 땅 아란조게 냐라야 Somewhere watch Namina, and Gordon's need you the me.
Mm.
Nega Tare Yobadi, Dubu, Penal, on the Hamiko once on the Penal Hayko once on the Tova, a pure lens of the Levina, and you got to me, maybe son of Jire. I Tarbar Besana, Tariomari, and Yongore, Slavra. Jezangata, Bede Tarju Yobati, Godingri. Jezang Godin Chukun Jung, say, some of the deliver. Jezangata, Godin singing the top you the me. Any London city don't see you the me, said Shinita, because of that, our Michigan of Shajundo, Namba Sanji Wigi, that Chugi knew Robert and Gozo said that you would didn't go to your race on it. That Deansry.
Good me. And so when we talk about the pervasive the pervasive conditioned suffering, then wherever we go, there are the contaminated aggregates, and there's no sort of way, there's no kind of liberation from, there's no freedom from them. They're in the nature of suffering. There may be some temporary happiness, that's possible, but there's no possibility for any stable happiness, which is something that we really need to be very clear about. And in Nagaduna's letter to a king, when they talk about the sort of the meaning of or pervasive conditioned suffering, he uses the words it's a vessel of suffering. It's a vessel of suffering. And in Dharmakirti, in Dharmakirti's compendium of valid cognition, he uses the words it's a support. It's like a support for suffering, that all of the suffering is supported out of that contaminated aggregates, the pervasive conditioned suffering, and the aggregates, the contaminated aggregates. And so there is a great meaning in those two ways of saying that it's a vessel for suffering. It's a support for suffering in these great texts. And so even if you're, born in, in an amazing sort of one of the incredible God realms, or in the, where manifest suffering is hard, most of the manifest suffering is not really there. Or, you can even look at it in terms of into some of the human realms and the people who have achieved great sort of wealth or status, like millionaires or stuff. People of great sort of resources, even in our sort of realm. Then what we still say that we still have to understand that their aggregates are a support for suffering. That the suffering is pervasive. This conditioned suffering is pervasive, and so in this. When we're talking in relation to the being of the smaller scope, and talk about counteracting attachment to the appearances of this life, and then when we move up into the because of the middle scope, and we talk about counteracting, we have to talk about counteracting attachment to the whole of samsara, and there are sort of almost level sum doshis, nichung, tadu, and padunyewa. Dunyewa is a sum doshi tadu. So, so I was asking, I thought it sounded a little bit the way he said it, like there are three, but you have this kind of disgust or disillusionment with samsara, but that doesn't. So you develop a sort of mind which has a kind of revulsion at samsara, but to have renunciation means the wish to attain liberation, and also that wish to kind of strive for, if we actually talk about the sort of almost like the definition, or a sort of a simplified version of the definition of renunciation, is that desire, the striving in order to attain attain liberation. But the disgust with samsara itself is not that. We still there still needs to be also there's an added element, and that is in terms of renunciation. You also have this added element that you understand that there is a liberation, there is a cessation to suffering. If you, as a simple example of how that desire to wish to, if a criminal, a serious criminal has been imprisoned and is about to be, and tomorrow in the afternoon at 3 or 4 o'clock, they will execute him, and then in his mind there's a great of course he wishes that there was a way to escape from that situation, from the prison and that situation. But if you give also, so that's a sort of, just a general kind of wish. But if you also were to then give that prisoner some sort of method or some kind of hope that would actually happen, then his wish to escape would be kind of single-pointedly focused on that possibility of escape. So we, in that second example, we the wish to escape also has to be involved with the understanding, with the question of whether cessation of suffering exists or not. For instance, as I said earlier, in the gods and the Pure Land realms, there's not manifest suffering, but that's not freedom, that's not liberation, it's not cessation, and that being must again return into states with more manifest suffering. And so you have these questions: does cessation, completely non-returning, complete cessation of suffering exist or not? And is an effective path which we follow will allow us to attain that cessation? And so, guarantee sort of the essence. Said the Buddha said the essence, the essence of the Buddhist path. When we go through all these contemplations.
Somebody stop. Okay, thank you. Is it working? Okay. So the two things we differentiate here about the renunciation and the yinjung la kadisturba disgust towards samsara. So why we differentiate these two is many people in Tibet, in India, or they get confused when they feel like fed up with the suffering of this life, and that suffering is something is not going as what you really wanted to, and then you feel like you left alone and the life is boring. Now I want to become a monk, and now I want to become a Milarepa. So these things can be quite the danger, because leaving everything and then going into the mountain. And we have Tibetans, we have a saying, someone copied how Milarepa is doing, and he gave everything, and then he went to the cave, stayed there a few months, and then he came back and said, he complained about Milarepa, saying this Milarepa, he's the one whom I have to blame, because I have give up everything as he did, and I didn't get anything now. So many people, and including myself, sometimes when we have this disgust feeling towards samsara, and then we feel like, oh, now I should do the good serious. This feeling quite kind of a bubble of there's a beautiful stable. All the in this life are changes 100%. But 저기 그봐 딱 기체셔도 다단다 디카도 셰던 저기도 제장가 당면 또 비셔를 그 당진을 누구 여버 체매 가로만 주 두투제 그러니 다 디기 아주 간이 좀데만 손에 독시 체셔도데 인데 제와 치먹을 컨디션 나세지 제와 치미지마다 아니 하바도 레 타신 타바도 저 같은 누구 나세 띵아도 더버된데 레초 이나ян다 더벌레마 더벌 같이 딜레 양안 주기 냐바니 투야디 잔자 탐바 다음에도 셔럽지 곰 아니 그래서 미다바야고 주고 보이나 체딜레 현차 용을 줘야지다 하바도 지기 가르소래 응아르기 현자 쉬우지에서디 용을 두고요부터 세우 쉬우지래도 디단다 경고를 미치기 건전 피지기 과지 연애 핑크도 송도가 당 아주 대응하는 저기 건전 피지 단 만들어 통 가르치고 있으나 반대 나와 자고 우마주고 나로 우마 당고 거두라 아니 지단이 요래요 말에 컴퓨터도 요래요 말에 둥기 잘라 디 먹도 요래요 말에 스케치식이요 말에 가발도 쓰기요 말에 디에디 가르쳐 말한저 단 유모만 루비께 용서데 당진 때니 다도 좀 당진 될 때니 용구도 다 근데 다도 좀 당진기 신유디 전부다도 여담 매 시제 아니 잡으시네 제들라 아니 당고 세기 남샤도 송도와 아니 니 매버 통데 담에 통 세디 지단에 다 유명기지 말아 봐 너저지 삼보디 야고지 레토이나 아니 신에 미신베 최여의 요마레 상제의 최대 컨트롤 인나세 게제스팀 레전드 기제 잠시만 된다 닝부 최여의 메시지 다 디르다 다 디송 덴지게 담에 또비 셔럽 디고 소소고 니만이니말이야 조지 통한데 디기 상제려야 태버처럼요 공부를 태버처럼요 아니 배 지금 소소가 자벨라말이야 아니 지금 시험에 다 태버 개투배지 땡땡 용도가 용도 유서봐
and so in terms of because say digi namsha digi medapa competics tame competics say digi namsha di doire stine say chime de doye menan so doppelsagere say diva doppelsagere and it can just check it out so yeah we so then when we were as I was describing about the looking to see if there's a path which allows us to achieve liberation in relation to that the meditation on the selflessness and if we start to cultivate this we can see that we can maybe we will understand that in this life we can sort of see how it's helping us to reduce our grasping and attachments in this life, but we might wonder how how will it affect future lives, and also how will it affect because of the factors of things like very subtle karma. We might wonder how it will affect reduce because say chimigi dashendigi dapazimba di doya meni doppelsagere marbe didwa. Yeah, so will it how will it reduce that in this life, meditation on the selfless nature of ourselves and phenomena, and meditation on impermanence, sort of we can see that sort of reduction And actually, when His Holiness talks talks in relation to, you know, saying that quantum physics is a kind of, there's many similar things about the scientific presentation of quantum physics and how that helps to bring benefit, you know, in reducing this kind of emotions or way of thinking. But in the Buddhist tradition, that is there, but in the Buddhist tradition, it's slightly different. And in so if we look at what, for instance, in the 6th chapter of Chandrakirti's Entering the Middle Way, in the section where he deals with the refutation of the self of persons, and we're not really in that section, you're not discussing about whether computers or external phenomena exist in the way that they appear to exist. What we're discussing is the very the very source out of, the very place out of which come all of our the very source out of which come all of our kinds of negative our afflictions, and that those the very source which those afflictions come out of is the self-grasping. And so what we try to look at is how the object of the object of apprehension of the mind, which grasps the self to be inherently existent, and we examine that and look at whether that really exists the way it appears, or not. Does it really exist the way it appears or not? So you look at that object of apprehension of the grasping, self-grasping, and therefore, you know, this is that investigation leads us to the understanding of the selflessness of phenomena. But in this case, in Chandrakirti's case, he's talking about the person itself, and then with this understanding, with this understanding of selflessness, what it does is it as we understand it more and more, what it does is bring stronger and stronger. It enhances our faith in the Buddhas, our faith in the masters who've talked about this, the way that things exist, like Nagarjuna, and our gurus who have taught us this way, and it helps us to kind of enhance and increase our faith in the Buddhas and the gurus.
Okay. 다 제가 땅 알아는 기치슈디 남샤 균도 저게 말한줄 니중 삼로 다 직당인데 아니 그래서 그래 계시슈드데 삼당다 니선롭지 등에 gengi 두몸이 드리지레 깔로브레 gengi 다 조디 말하는 줄한다 슝 귤라면 rol이야 아니 제정가 시간적이 뜻이 코알레니 중계에 탑들이야 아니 삼로당다 니선롭지 아니 동행기 싸와데 가르치기도 세게 삼로당다 식당 아니 되네 저게 묘몽기 싸와데 가르치기도 세 삼로당다 니 그래서 남샤 전당아주 코에 잡아 가르쳐야 살자만 랍대지마도 삼로당다 니요 봐 저장가 다 삼로당다 니디 가르치는 수동아 란주게 다 반대된데 그 동네 정말 간대수 중샤 세드좀 깨월랜디 중샤 세디 네 깨워든 지내면은 저 상황 연구 말아 봐 깨워 지내면 인자 저 중샤 세 삼로들이 언제 좀be 아니 깨워 코랑 아니 다 가르쳐 그래 아주 다 드라마시바 딜람나 아주 해피 버스데이 to you slave this 이 괜찮아 차득도 아니 이거 돼서 좀 상당한 가가를 많이 고 해피 버스데이 고 상당한 가가를 다이나야 개체셔도 그런 쪽이 아니 최바지기도 좀 다 하바도 년중기 삼로 견도여 되는지 기부 딩을 남도 쇼딩이 이게 남상지기 간이지 쳐봐다 용다 용 개발렘바 디그레샤 세두 쩨베 개가 나치 세야들 동해 통분 나는 개와들 동해 통해 축체를 벌써 셴 남샤 준동안 저기 7월 동해 통되게 하래 아 7월에 동해 dim바데 수지를 가지고 어쩌고 말해 나야디 수지를 가지고 어쩌고 말해 정말 동해를 쓰고 개와 동해를 쓰려나 디켈렌 동안 담에 줘 다디켈런 또 같은 간수는 단정 아주 단다 깨와 딘데 까니 체디 상하로 깨와디 셔버리 스타도 잠베 아니 깨와디 가고도 그래도 다 깨와 고야게 탑시되라 아니 신의 탑라만 보지 다 레드 저 근데 세고도 세 대게제디 신의 레용 그래 깨와디 가르기 최송스들 레기 최송스들이 야레용도 다 원한 레디 아니 가르기 최송스들 레디 디군의 란지기 녀몽 그렇죠. 녀몽이 가르치 제순스는 아니 디 군의 란지고 쪼데다 머리바디 채송 시도점배 아니 통마 머리바 아니 자외 머리바 아니 다 쪼스는 자와스는 어디 머리바디가 두단치 어디 오늘 다는 알아줘 도분이를 삼아다야디 참려양 편도침 부시오래
So usually, usually when we're discussing renunciation, we tend to directly just go to thinking that this kind of very direct, we only have really one-dimensional way of thinking about renunciation, and that is looking for the root of samsara. We go straight to that. But actually, one of my teachers had a very sort of uncommon advice and explanation on how to sort of engage with renunciation, which is based in Maitreya's Sublime Continuum, Uttara Tantra, and that there was two sort of aspects to thinking about renunciation. One is that the contemplation about what is the root of suffering, and then also the other one is what are the root of the mental afflictions. So there are slightly different ways of thinking of it. And so when we look to the root, if we look in the context of the root of what is the kind of base or the root of suffering, then in this uncommon explanation, what we come down to identifying is that it's actually just taking birth. Taking birth itself is the root of suffering. Because we're born, we suffer. If we weren't born, suffering would not arise. So birth itself, taking birth itself. And of course, in a modern world, we have sort of, if you're going to spoil someone's happy birthday party, if you bring that up on their birthday, of course. But then, of course, happy birthday is a sort of, the traditions of like happy birthday are kind of sort of just kind of regular worldly conventions, and so it wouldn't be you probably may not want to do that. But in terms of if someone is a Dharma. It might not be sensible, but to say that, but for a Dharma practitioner, for someone who is contemplating renunciation, for someone who is engaged in trying to practice in accord with the being of the middle stoke capacity, then usually so this is how we should think. And usually when we think about birth, aging, sickness, and death, and then our normal way of thinking about it is probably we're most afraid of death. That's what when people say, well, where's the most suffering lie within those? We're going to identify death or perhaps sickness, but who will identify birth as the actual the kind of root, the main kind of basis, the main root of suffering? It's very hard to accept that the kind of main cause of suffering is actually through birth. And so then we need to, so then if we accept that, we then need to start thinking about ways in which we can cease to cause the cessation of birth. And there are there are many many paths of explanation which deal with that, of how to cease birth. But if we think of so then, and then this connects with the Rinpoche the Sikchik the later they le digi kasana kuni lonchi le kasana nyumongi kuni lonchi kase late
개와디 가르기 렌샤스는 레기 렌샤스 다오나 레디 가르기 렌샤스다 레디 가르기 렌샤스나 아니 뉴몬 된 렌샤스 뉴몬이 가르기나 아니 머리버들 렌샤스 다 자와야 신에 돼야 돼.
So the sort of the process of sort of how this sort of evolutionary process occur, birth, where does it come from? It comes from karma, and that is sort of and and where does that come from? That comes from by the kind of motivated, or is laid down by the motivating force of the mental afflictions. Where do those mental afflictions come from? Then we talk about this is where we talk about beginningless ignorance. Many words are used for this: beginningless ignorance, the main kind of form of ignorance, root ignorance. So that's where the mental afflictions come from. So we need to trace, when we're looking at this aspect about where suffering comes from, we need to trace this kind of process all the way back to its root.
다원은 레세기다 답디 가르쳐고래. 레드점베 다 치르비기 레세 답 뇨모세 답다 치르바나로라. 그런 것은 다 대수적으로 차디유스를 알아도 나고 상계에 다 도수적으로 차요 봐. 안테나신 치르바죠. 교 차유스를. 다 이나양 레당 나저 남전당 아니 도게바와 나로라야. 아니 나도 도게바와 미세제메 인기 도게바와 도스임 제나메 가브야. 나테나로라야. 레레님 못된다. 뇨모님 못된다. 치르바 쪽이 쉬워지 디디 탑시다면도 지금도 배나 가시 멜로 총바. 아니 가시 지금 6년 된야로 써봤다. 아니 추지해다. 아니 전에 지금 왕슈에 손도다. 그래서 정말로 다 왕슈에 그래서 정말로 치료비 지금도 제장아 데레레레야 아니 단다 대 아주 르베 바바 비비카 공기 니 제장가 아니 멜로 총바디 아니 레시그마리스 아니 디 메스 디 멜마 총체 아니 동예제버디기 동예제 규제마도 지기 레세 마레 페나 단다 체말레비어바 버터플라이 시그마르베 디 어디 처음에가는 봐 처음샤베는 코란을 경험을 하면도 협상지에라 하면도 지고지냐래 어딘데 랍자도가 아니 저는 어란조 뉴네만 보여래 아니 지르베는 뉴네스 오니요래 제장가 어란조 삼로 여고지 마다는 아니 르뱅기 뒤 지르바 가도 전에 아니 뉴네 템바티양 지게 레스 세제 마리스 레 세버지게 타 마리스 디 가진선 조금지 유를 송시도와 조금지 유를 아니 페나 저기 미 셈버 초니 아니 칼라마센 데리인데 지구지냐레스 저런 내려랍저도와 제가 땅 알아줘 제가 레 님보 된다는데 야보지 마시나 저를 랍저도 줘 야보시 공부시나 야보도 봐 제가 아니 되네 왕체야 돼. 원주기 왕골니. 아니 뒤님보시도 원주기 왕골니. 아니 레세로 그랬어. 네 원주기 왕골니 레세가 민도가 아니 원주기 왕골 사격을 메데라 안 거기 단도기 아니 야 콜을 차과제야도 콘도사야도 차상 통해야도 그 레사기도 왔던데. 에틸라디sambe 아니 되게 랜들이야. 그런 게다 가진부터 중자. 아니 그런 게 랜드를 치료비 랜 가르쳐서나 체딜라다 그 통고 말해대 그 시차네 왕되게 내가 가지고 지그래서나 아니 시차도 지그래스 랜 잡도가 시차도 왕디 내가 전에 레딩가 세로 그랬으나 아니 시차도 제발로 단다 제마도 가르랬어. 야 저당지 저버저시야. 저버저 도송이 제장 같은 데좀 어 심주시에 계신 분은 랑저는 저기도 왕도 쉬제 용모세를 핑거도 왜 레세를 핑거도 왜 당진 뉴르도야 당진 매버셔 핑거도 왜 뒤치워도 냠도 레고 와 그래서 네 계신 분이셔 다원나 저기 어 안을하와도 야 찍디지도 아 그가 배나 요모를 예捐大지 요모를捐大지 아니 타르바토버 최고 그랬지 되게 따와 섬주인데 중앙도 준비 아니 한다 베벨링데 얘기 아니 차과선으로 버지리야 코捐大지 까두고 말했어 가전선은 차과지도 아주 차과를 연된 통제 안에 차과지 매봤어
Ah,
그봐
right.
차과를 연된 통제 차과지기요다 아니 차과를捐다베나 아니 만 용으로 두고 그랬어 이 말했어 차과지에디 주디 강lem에 고참녀들들 추በ지 왕게 말레고 요르스 디까마토는 용고 말했어 이제 신에 다 오다디 단다디 셰셰 단다니 디 가서를 용모를 捐 따지 검세디 아주 남전을 디고 봐 오다 디기 랜드 창 dom전이 되는 남전으로 맞다마 손도 전배니 지제지 다 타바 가르스 토그랬으나 아니 디유 순진 가서 뒤 지디 친구도 왜 디유 순중 매버네스 말에 디유 순중 매버네 대봉원이 많이 있어 다음에 또 등진기 신유 마켓에 봐도 안에 타바 톱2 말했어
So much, yeah.
디 다시는 디 다음에 되는 좀 봐.
Because so dancing 신유 되게 숨을 주 비바도 아니 타바 톡톡을 말해서.
저라 다 타바 톱도 말했어. 해세도 말했어. 용어세.
Leo. Yeah. And so so we also, you know, we discussed that process of how birth comes from karma from mental afflictions, and mental afflictions from beginningless ignorance. And then, so we look maybe at ways that that we can deal with karma, with the huge variety of karma that we have. And in the sort of non-Buddhist Indian traditions had many presentations about how to deal with karma, and you know, it's probably that even it's true it's fair to say that the Buddhist tradition has changed a lot over the years, and it would be fairly fair to say that these non-Buddhist Indian traditions have also changed over the years. But if we go back to in Bhava Viveka's Blaze of Reasoning, this is I haven't read this directly, but my teacher had done some research into this in Bhava Viveka's Blaze of Reasoning, where there is a big presentation of non-Buddhist traditions, non-Buddhist sort of tenets, and they posit many sort of there's a big presentation in the non-Buddhist schools of how to as to what is the antidote to karma and what is the antidote to the mental afflictions, such as, you know, austere practices such as jumping into fires, or you know, they have this because of the so that you're staying in the center of the blazing fires in the hot sun. They have kind of ablution practices, kind of washing, purification practices. They have nyungne, you know, this kind of nyungne practices, and also the taking of initiations. These are several kind of methods that are described as antidotes to karma by the non-Buddhist schools. And so Bhava Viveka sort of goes through each of these ones and sort of criticizes them by saying that he says that, you know, for instance, in these kind of blazing fires or jumping into a fire, he said it's not going to cause the cessation of karma. It's going to cause, it'll cause more suffering. It'll cause you more suffering only. Not only will it not get rid of your karma, it'll cause you more suffering in the process. For instance, you know, and I think he uses the example of a butterfly, which would when flying into the fire will only have, you know, will only have tremendous disadvantage. There'll be no advantage to a butterfly doing that. So, and then in terms of Nyungne, the sort of, you know, he says that this will also just become a cause for you to have more severe hunger and more severe thirst, and that there are even people whose minds are kind of very disturbed, who don't eat or don't get hungry. So there's no kind of inherent value to that kind of practice. And then also he in terms of taking initiation, so because what you're trying, you remember what you're trying to posit is an actual antidote, something which provides a counteractive force to our karma. And then also when he deals with deals with initiation, and says, for instance, that it's said that in some of the non-Buddhist texts that you receive initiation from Shiva, and then that clears away your karma. And so then from Viveka and the Buddhists counteract that with an argument, but it can be seen that even after someone who's received an initiation, they're still prone to anger and attachment and, you know, mental afflictions, and again they'll be creating karma. And so then there's a response which says, oh well, in this life that's true, but after you die, then the karma, because you've received initiation, then once you die, then the karma will be exhausted. But then the counter argument to that is, well, if it can do it after death, why can't it do it now? And these are things that, you know, we should research ourselves. And we should, so there's okay, that's the Baba Viveka's criticism of the non-Buddhist schools. But just take a look at ourselves. When we take initiations, what happens to us? We should research our own experience. Does our karma, our mental afflictions, our self-grasping, are these things reduced when we take initiations or not? So this is something that we should look at ourselves, you know. And then Baba Viveka goes on to look at methods for counteracting and causing the cessation of the mental afflictions, and methods which provide us, you know, with a path to liberation. And he said, you know, then there's a sort of a question of whether seeing the faults of attachment is good enough to help reduce our attachment or not. 세계말에 녀몬에서 세계말에 얘네 차벌레 이처럼 디송래 차벌레 윤튼 통나 아니 가르쳐 보래 차벌레 윤튼 통나
베나 녀 차벌레야 쩐도 따지 아니 차고 까고 그래 에스지 라베이나 차벌레 쩐 따지 차고 고투고 말해 가르쳤으나 차벌게야디 차벌레 윤튼 통니 차벌게야 말아 봐스
차벌레 윤튼 통네. Yeah, so that yeah, so then he says, well, that just seeing the faults of, if you accept that just seeing the faults of attachment will be enough to just get rid of it, then doesn't seeing the quality, isn't attachment born out of seeing the qualities? Because so doesn't seeing the qualities of attachment cause it to be born? and so he argues like that. But what he's saying to us is that you have to attack the cause, and you have to attack the cause of these mental afflictions, not just directly seeing, not just directly seeing faults in them. So, and these mental afflictions are underpinned by mistaken mind, and so so that's what we need to look at. What is the underpinning kind of mistaken mind that causes them? So we need to see how the mental afflictions arise. And in Dharmakuti's compendium of valid cognition, there's a phrase where he says, in order to kind of reduce or counteract, you can't cease karma unless you counteract the namjagi dazingi
Diyu sunjung mebanis, di shinyu sunma dangzingi shinyu sunma chungyu pado le dang nyomo ni tenne meba suetu malis.
So when you unless you can counteract the kind of the grasping object of the kind of apprehended grasping object of self-grasping itself, then you cannot, if you can't counteract that, directly counteract that object, then you will never be able to kind of in a permanent kind of way cease the karma and mental afflictions.
어디부샤 다 디인도 알아줘 단진년리야 탑라망고 거지를 막 가대 띵만 저기 제득이 어려 다디 알아줘 얘기 디시고 좀 저거 가르스나 망보지디 민지가 람다 죄제가 람니디 예와다다 마제시 아니 왕지슈나 타바토로 그랬삼삼 뉴네지데나 타바토로 그랬삼삼 부지 오늘 타바토 없어야지 자와저데 맞아게 소소랑게 깔래겹지 당진리야 아니 년부 된당디 토네 마도 지금 타람 매버다 그래서 정말 년이 켜라 탈베람데 타바랑라랑데 셰버기 좀 전에 타제셔였다 제장가 디기 아란조비 냐라야 타바 체메 룹세야다 가고래 이나야 등진고랑 냐리야 록셰 임바지다 추베 임바지 아란조비 당 네버텐 투어지고 다디 네버텐마도 하람이요 말이야 다디 거로지 냐바지냐서나 등진들 록셰 지임바 로 추베진지 임바 텔레테네 마주기 단다 차당 몽송 쳔베네 다 아란조비 다 단다 냐바 탐지 용서가 싸워도 디레샤 세지 충분히나 신의 만족이다 코와 타다라 아니 니중세되다 인중계도 지체 아니 된네데 탈바지도 고된시도 슬라비잠베 아니 신의 니중세되도 탈바된 얘기 코와라 인중의 로직다 코와라 아니 냐버리 좀 로스지 somebody 타바라 양 donde 집다 아니 코아마 방도니 로 냠도도 수런데 아니 제르미치 닌생군도 타바다 디가르다 닌생군도 아니 신의 된대지라나 섬지다 배가 좀 맞었네 미방고지가 라고라다 지기 무 로트리지 라기에서 놓치다 라다 로트리드라마라 하고 말때 이네다 산이는 인알 찍다 디릭냠바지 라트 섬섬지고 초와지 충분이나 어디든지 준비했나? 인생권도 탈바트는 일로 중만테지 인중계발라 세지다 기부 등기 상로로 디디지 간 상당부 유스레
and so there in Bhava Viveka's text there is many there's many sort of refutations of the outsider's presentation of the paths to liberation. And why am I sort of bringing this up is that in the sense that we tend to think that like doing certain practices such as we ourselves sort of think in this way, that if we do certain practices such as Nyungne practice, receiving initiations, this kind of thing, that these are in themselves paths to liberation. But actually, the Buddha, when the Buddha speaks, to us, he says that I can only show you the path to liberation. It's up to you to walk the path yourself. I can only show you the path to liberation. And really what we need is we need all of this needs to be underpinned by valid ascertainment, valid cognition of, for instance, that self-grasping, we need to clearly identify and decide that self-grasping is a completely mistaken mind, that it's a completely wrong mind and completely mistaken, and that so we, as I described earlier, there are two aspects here, and in relation to this, validly cognizing liberation and the fact that the root of our suffering is self-grasping is mistaken itself. And then if we're able to validly ascertain that, then we would really this wish to be. So you have this sort of the kind of disgust or disillusionment with samsara, which is more in the sense of, has more of the side of it to wishing to be free from all of the negative states of samsara. So that's the kind of disgust with samsara. And then you have the kind of ascertainment of the, which is like on this kind of negative side, in the way of getting rid of something. And then on the positive side of establishing or developing something, you have this sense that liberation exists, that liberation really does exist, and validly ascertaining that liberation exists. And that's the sort of positive side, where you wish to be free from all the kind of negative states of samsara, which is the disgust, the disillusionment of samsara, and you wish to attain this, you've ascertained this liberation and you wish to attain it. That's the more like the renunciation. And then in Je Rinpoche's three principal aspects of the path, just to find the verse, he says, when he's discussing on the section when he's discussing renunciation, and then he says, and when the thought, this is in the 5th verse of the Je Rinpoche's three principal aspects of the path, and then he says, when the thought aspiring for liberation arises day and night. Yeah, they're just screen sharing it. So it's the 5th verse, the last two lines. And when the thought aspiring for liberation arises day and night, at this point, true renunciation has arisen. So this is what this combination of disgust with samsara and the renunciation are what are very important. And so that, day and night. And so if you can imagine that someone like a beggar who has this feeling that they're almost certain to, because of the win the lottery in the next few days or something like that, this real sense of anticipation and focus, then that's how, so Je Rinpoche is saying that when you have that, then really, when you have that, as in the 5th, it's described in the 5th verse, then you really have the practice of the middle scope, a being of the middle incapacity. Yeah.
Well, what did you? That in a come join me do. Come do. We only have 10 minutes. Maybe the director, to see the director and who has authority can give me a little more time. Is it okay?
Of course, Rinpoche. Of course.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. 저 재성가 그 저 람조 남숨 나로라 아니 예중 송자비 쇼라 자주 심송 자주 심서비 심서비 송디 쇼다가라야 아니 돈이 걸 송브레 다이나야 돈이 디리 샤비나 저장가 기부 친구들 기부 등기 버르들 샤비나 야고도 다디 가정스 나고 전주 심마게 원라 돈이 고아 서로지 고요 봐 대인주전배 다 아란주 다 코웨기 자와데려야 아니 대담하고 싶지 차브레 대저전 두다하고 용해디 아니 코웨 자와데려다 년부된당 당 아니 코웨 자와라 대담면 다 차지 되게 다 두다하고 차브레 아란주 두다 시세디 다 계제셔도 아란주 남셔준도 다 용자하게다 우리 팀주에 나와도 지금 요래 다 대용도 잡에 다 계치 쉬어디 아란주 다음에도 셔럴 때니 니 당진 충으로 그래 세티 디디고시 다원은 당진 충으로 두고 요나 아니 당진 충으로 당지 야 믹스기 수수 등에 가두이네 내년 치료 안디 슝망보다 지름부터 당디 자가르 켜베 숭망보 나로려야 아니 동번이라 가고 진행망보도스 봐 동번이리야 지금 제고에 내가 치료디 가르쳤으나 개지슈디 동원이 통니 다음에 보면다 개침부를 돼 이나양 딜레데니 아니 개줄 제야라야 투슈 쳐도고 요마도 다음에 다음에 고아들래 온데 좀 셈나로라야 떠나면 봐다 아니 그다 가가에 미도 세가 삼도디나로라 체달로 혼나니가 전부 시부시레스 제장 딜라야 아니 단다 그러면 아예 되베기 슝나로 용도 받는다고 저기 슝나로 용도 고블루도 슝나로 되는 거 봐. 어디 이도 잡에더니 제장가 동리 통화 티기 아니 띵중래야 녀버전 되지. 아니 그렇게 하고 요래. 얘는 잡에 알아줄 돈이 통받다 현토야 돼. 돈이 차상화 통해야 돼. 돈이 차상화 통해야 돼. 아니 띵중고 코알이야 녀버전 되지. 딩어란주다 슈경고도 어디 인도 좀 베다 레지 중보이나 아니 아주 동이 검니 아니 감라리도 세디 매발라 동이 돈에 때네 라다 라마다 레준데를 속을 이지처로도 손세지 된지 연구주저래 어디 저란주 툴을 잡으시지 나 때네 어란주 단저지기다 잠을 내온도 좀베 다 지기 아주 많소네 다 타르바 세치 세면주비 여바 타르바 토토비하게 완전만 손에다 지게 타르바스 디지 두 삼점지다 정말로 셈타니 버지 차야지 리뷰어 다데네 다 chanjugu sem을 만들어 고도 잠베 다 개체 다 깔리 쉬어버데 아니 다 디리샤 지단에다 chanjugu 셈 개발에 개 라도 이지가 선바다 다 지지지 뭐 요래데 개체슈디 아니 다 타바타나 다 딕송 세기 삼로디 다 개체슈를 찍으셔 다 타바지 토소나 당아다 니마 개월음 찍듯이 찍가는 거 봐. 또 dom침부를 셔. 경고름 찍게 영고 동반이 시도 얘기 지게 줍나게 줍투사래 삼삼지 니마 춘중간에 막 튕겨였어. 제장가다네 동반이 지 통네 된 고된지 톱소나 앞에 김열 자고 왔음지. 김열선 하고로 사면
그 시부드가
비교시 얘되고
알려
들다 땡냠스다 배전디 인기로 봐 그래서 그래 고발에 냠벌 랑게 상물로 때디 아니 냠벌샤고 세 중국요 봐 랑게 상물로 때디 어디 양다 당원도 제세 줘 봐. 딘디치기도
양다 타는데 알레 양다
랑게 상물로 때디 양다 당원도 제가 세 줘 봐. 어디 수고 있어 봐. 제장하다 딘디치 고된지 톱선나 나가 김년대 시제 챙겨送만 신지지 다딩아 저 이렇게 치슈지리기 있어요. 전주 웃음 깨봐라. 아니 되네 개인이바디 아니 랑된 용수 조송 섬에 상부티. 다 타바 톱선나 땅에 된다 자산 사송스. 단 미션바 간에나 연애 용한테 개박하면 됐어. 개지저등 알아 다 다지기 게임에 밤 스타게임에 버서 왜 아니 지금 딱 간이 나면도 섹스무티 이래요도 참 베타티 아주 나 전주심들이야 개발하게 라운드에 지금 삼았어야 됐다 딩이 차리기 있어요.
And so in relation to the three principal aspects of the path, Jeremy's text on the three principal aspects of the path, then the kind of sequence of the three principal aspects is firstly renunciation, then bodhicitta, and then emptiness. Because nansu-digi toni-digi kasare gebu chungdan dingi kima shagorbe. Ding dang chungdan ding. So we need, but actually that's how it goes in that sequence. But I think also that's the usual sequence. So you have renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness. But I think what we need to do is to bring down the emptiness a little bit and stick it in the middle there, somewhere between somewhere within the practice of the being of the middling scope and the greater scope. So they're sort of bringing. It's maybe not the before, because before we actually develop the awakening mind, I think that we have to have some sense of the meaning of emptiness, and so we need some form of sense of emptiness before we develop bodhicitta. Now, when we have a system of four tenet systems, and of course we describe the highest tenet system as the prasangika system, but these systems of philosophical tenets arose essentially the main differences, the essential differences between these different tenet systems are when they are the subtlety of presentation in relation to what is the antidote to the root of samsara, and so there's an increasing array of subtlety moving from the lower to the higher tenet systems, and but they're essentially all dealing with how to counteract the root of what the root of samsara is and how to counteract it. So for prasangika, we have the selflessness of the meditation. We have meditation on the kind of lack of inherent, the selflessness of phenomena and persons reduces our grasping both to self-grasping and grasping at phenomena. And many, in terms of how to reduce this self-grasping, not only Rinpoche, but also many Indian great sort of masters and scholars have discussed, what it takes in order to do that, and therefore in relation to that emptiness, and so this connects to emptiness. But then we also have to one very important factor, which Rinpoche is very specifically mentioning, is that when in terms of realizing or understanding emptiness, that realization of emptiness should not cause us a kind, it has to have a kind of joy or a kind of positive impact, a positive delight, which comes from that. If there's no sense of delight or no real kind of feeling about it, then that's very easy. It's very easy to lead us into nihilism. And so, as is mentioned in the text by Aryadeva, Nagarjuna, Chandakirti, when the realization or the seeing of emptiness, the realization and understanding of emptiness has to itself lead on to or draw on the understanding of dependent origination, or it needs to kind of enhance understanding of dependent origination. And so it shouldn't be this kind so it's not just about seeing emptiness in that the emptiness in the sense of the inherent nature of phenomena or personal phenomena, but actually the complete understanding of emptiness, which needs to draw on and enhance the kind of dependently related side of the path. And so not just a fear of a kind of lack of something, and if that emptiness, if it's able to sort of enhance our understanding of dependent origination, then our sort of understanding and faith, belief in the deities, the gurus, and in karma will be strengthened. And so in terms of we talked about in terms of valid ascertainment of liberation, then we need to we discussed a little bit about in terms of valid ascertainment of liberation and the being of the smaller scope, but in terms of bodhicitta, now when we think about bodhicitta, we have to sort of look at what are the central kind of obstacles which make it very difficult for bodhicitta to arise. And one of the sort of ways of thinking that prevents bodhicitta from arising is that the liberation is sort of simple liberation, personal liberation is enough. That's kind of enough. And I think His Holiness, when he was talking about being able to
It's more like His Holiness, when he was young, he could understand emptiness, and then he thought, now generating this mind, then I will achieve cessation. Once I get cessation, then I will sleep peacefully forever. So that's what he was thinking. Then later he received the teachings from the Kundalama Rinpoche, the way of Bodhisattva's life. Then he felt like there's no other way than practicing this Bodhicitta.
And then and so that's one of the sort of the liberation is simple liberation is enough. That's one of the kind of main obstacles that prevents bodhicitta from being developed. But another one is also that we feel that achieving sort of mere liberation will also be the completion of all of our own welfares and wishes, and also sort of combined with that is a kind of indifference to whether others suffer difficulties or not. That we don't pay attention to that, but we feel that all of our own kind of our own welfare is totally complete, and the kind of maximum welfare for ourselves is complete. So those two kinds of ways of thinking are the main kind of obstacles to development of bodhicitta.
다 계지슈디 나로 chanju 심셰베갈 dimba니 송고요레 란든 다 챈든 세지 란든 투 추구 챈든 수구스 디송고요바 다 란즈만 균도 로종긴 다 아니 베제만고 나로래야 아니 챈든기도 아니 지금 chanju 심 제고와디 식중부 시부 송고요레 셴거던도 안에 하와도 ranjin yong tang ko ya di sung yo re ina ya ta ji shu ji shung na lo le ya sewo me de ni ani ji de rangdön tung yang rangdön du yang ani rangdön yong so zo ba la yang ani chengju le mi gu re se de 이거 수치 목해요 말이야. 이 인도 잠에 산지 고방 토비아디 랑든 디치도양 산지 고방 토고를 세니디 또 가고로 잘 그래 정말도 알 디어레 망치엘이야 아니 심진기 된 디디지 쳐발라 산지 고방 토는 민두세 정말도 랑든 용조 줘발라야 산지 고방 토고도 세디 대지요. 대지 섬로 땅땅 용화서 그렇지. 가장 그 흉나로를 그것도 지금 하고요 말과. 제장가 다디 개치쇼데 이제 저름부치게 넘림치면 랍자지 가르쳐요서는 아니 지기 타바점식이 안에 랑된 조구도 세데 님부치 때문에 된 거랬어. 그봐. 타바점식 타바이나야 랑된 용조 조구면도 디체도 셴드는 미고도스라나 디기체도 셴드는 미고도스나 디기 님부 랑든 타바점식 랑든 용조 조구도스에게 저거들 랜디 잡토금에 무슨 그렇지 지란디 아니미크체다
네. 신든 엑스 란든기 그래서 신든기 믹베드디 카투디기 안티도트 맵체
베나 타바점식 랑든 용조 조구도 세 삼로도 유베들 님부 가르된 거잖아 단된 신된 하 지글 하도 왔잖아 신된이 신게 된다를 해 된다 말이야 봐 아디그 딜이야 랭크도 가르쳐 그래 디항 랑든 용조 조요 말이야 랑든 용조 조불라 그냥 디든 디치고 거르세 두점be 냐바도 랑든 두불라야 산지기 고만도 세지고 대장 저기 심니도 신경받게 뭐 전주 심지도 심진기 된 장장 성당만 랑게 된 제발에 딜을 하면도 생게 된 제발에 딜을 하면도 세 심슈니념도야 보고야지 딜려야 아니 저름부치다 원한 신든 두벌 신든 랑든 도양 아니 산지기 고만 두고야디 아니 카디스 두두레스도 되니 짬로 제베 갑라야 아니 산지기 연된디도 디체버지기다 톱난 영문에 전에 딜을 하기니 랑되면도 쓰면 양내양도 참고해야지 랍전남 정도가 어디 니긴게 양내양도 걸로는 거 인디 계란 조리 드링에 도시제 다 드링 두진스 상급들이 얘기 계란 조리 시르 체비 다지라도 드링 두주 심송 다양하게 시해야 돼 조합자 예심생
So the time is finished and my talk is finished at the same my what I've got to say is finished at the same time. So in terms of bodhicitta, the awakening mind, and then there are two we talk about these we talk about the kind of welfare or interest of self and the welfare and interest of others. And so in terms of the enlightened state, we talk about the welfare of oneself as being the Dharmakaya, and the welfare of the highest welfare of others as being the form body or the Rupakaya. And in the mind training texts, many texts, but in sort of particularly in the mind training texts, they tend to focus on how to establish and cultivate, the thought for the welfare of others, and then in relation to that, how to reduce the cherishing of ourselves. But in many, what is not sort of clearly stated in many of the texts is that in order to complete one's own, what is the process of how to complete one's own kind of welfare and the highest completion of one's own welfare and interests, and and what is not mentioned so often, there's more of a focus on the encouragement to work for the welfare of others, but also, if you mere liberation being the kind of thinking of mere liberation as being the completion of one's own welfare, and we need we tend to think of achieving enlightenment, achieving the fully enlightened state of Buddhahood as being essentially for others. But actually, it's important to be able to understand that the achievement of the fully enlightened state is also the completion of our own welfare. And this is not focused on, and so it's less thought about. This point is less thought about, because in the text it's mentioned less, and there's more of a focus on attaining enlightenment for others, and not so much that our own welfare is complete when only by attaining a completely enlightened state. And Jerry Rinpoche, his great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, sort of gives us advice about advice in relation to what acts as antidotes to think that the mere liberation is the completion of our own welfare, and gives us reasons why. And he sort of says there that if the question is what is the state that you need to achieve in order to complete your own welfare, and then somebody tells you to focus more on others, he's sort of saying it doesn't really kind of answer. It's not really a direct answer to the question. The question is, what's the antidote to your own? So he's saying that's in a sense, that's like in relation to others. That's others' business. And the question is, a completion of there's nothing wrong with this sense of completion of the welfare of both, so that actually the Bodhichitta would have this sense of actually wishing to attain enlightenment for the completion of the welfare, both of one's own welfare and of both others. And they kind of there's nothing wrong that these two go along with each other, and so and how that and where do and how do we sort of bring this into, because then so that's a sort of the state of Buddhahood is the completion of both those welfare, and where do we sort of bring it into our practice is that at the level of refuge, when taking refuge, then this is a good advice to remember when we talk, because when we in terms of refuge and the contemplation of the qualities of the Buddha, then this would also be, to remember this quality of Buddhahood also. This is advice that I received from my teacher on how to, how to integrate some of these less common explanations. And since it's a tremendously auspicious day, I wanted to share them with you. But now the time is finished, and what I have to say is finished at the same time. So.
Okay. 죄송하다. 타만데 계제주의 지난주 그 호모 그룹 지난주 공부시에라. 공부시에라 아니 뚱니 랑등도 추구세고 봐 남주 랑등도 추구세야 되나지. 랑등 추구 두비에 쳐도 딜라고 진조지. 아니 그래서 동반일이야. 강도도 빠지고 공부를 잡 samrotu tangdu se de shabina ani timepche karsore shendun sugu gejemepche randun chugu korang dozo gom chabina anga ju karjene sanji ko ban to mares digi shidible karjene nyembu tang je to mares ta zo shidible nyembu tendan de changju simgi simbe tone ani tongbanil le jeju nyemba shabina ani shidible nyembu rugu sungu yore 이나양 니에 티버치란조 가르스나 디메베체 전주기 심게 마심베 토네 동반일을 제주도 냠버 샤 동반일을 kumri shivaji tenje 되게 란데 추구세디 가르치는 건 좀 두고 말이지. 딜을 때는 뭐 딜을 때는 가르치는 건 저기다 산지기 수구구디 가르치는 좀 두고 말이지. 디 저버치 디 란저기 먼저 저버디 땅에 개침부를 가진 선한 안저기 남주 아니 산지기 두절라야 두저르긴 숨스치제 년주 란지 아니 대진스치제 송도 잠베 랑게라야 아니 먼저 다 깨져 요래 랑게라 랑상게 스타고요 민 제가 랑상게 시 탑시들이 지금에로 삼삼로 요래 이내 탑시들 람도 두고 매버선로지 어디 가서 딘데 깨져 요래 저 대란조다 아주야 슈마 마음발이야 토릉치야라나 아주 토릉치체 안디 버로 지란조야 대치기 공부시에는 개발요즘 중에 단도디 쉬비 아니 다 드린 아주 디 천제 디간 셔주체
and so I want to give you some homework for things to take away and take to mind after this teaching is finished. One of the things I want you to think about is, why is it that we talk about in terms of achieving the Dharmakaya, the Dharmakaya, the Dharma Buddhi of the Buddha of the body, the Dharmakaya. Why wouldn't it be sufficient that just kind of very single-pointedly focusing or concentrating on emptiness, even the sort of meditative equipoise, single-pointed meditative equipoise on emptiness, but completely detached from bodhicitta? Why is it that cannot is said to not be able to give rise to the Dharmakaya? Why is it that cannot sort of place down the imprints, the kind of footprints which will lead us to the Dharmakaya when it's not? So because in the text what it's saying is that why can't that alone provide the antidote to the kind of cognitive afflictions? Because it's said in the text that in order to provide an antidote to the cognitive afflictions, we need the wisdom of emptiness, which is kind of sustained or influenced by the awakening mind. And also why that also can't produce the Rupakaya, also the form body. So I want you to contemplate, this kind of why just meditating on emptiness alone, detached from the awakening mind, can't provide the antidote to cognitive obstructions, and also produce the Dharmakaya. And then we talked about, and then we have these sort of because the youngest sonranas and then ninto rangya and he take chamber dinzugi and he rangya dinzu karisore
rangya rang sangye sigba yendo sangye dinam thongje sidu jambe sangye ding sibete rangye ba 제가 코란로 산지 등세 고야디 년도기 시립을 님부 띵기요 말에 랑게기 시립을 님부 띵기요 같이 순고래
랑겔라 카리
랑게기 시립
땡기요 바 알레오 네
제장가디 랑규비 슝나로 용구로 봐 단다 먼저 디나로 디가 가서 온도 전나로 봐 디 인도 잠베 랑게라 산제 딩세 고야디 추구 된데 인기에 손으로 지어래 아니 시디pon야 우주 제기에 손으로 지어래 다디
전투기 셈메베체
말와 제장가 코란게 탑시디 지기어래 삼삼로 지어래 아니 저거디 지난주로 고고야디 디 가르치는 용어야면 어디 가르치래
so in the so we have this sort of the arhats the Rangsange, the self achieving Buddhas, and then the kind of the path of the Mahayana. Now the arhats in texts such as Maitreya's ornament of clear realization, it says that in that, which is really a presentation mostly from the Svartantrika Madhyamaka perspective, there it sort of talks about how it says that the arhats, the hearer vehicle, can't rely on the methods which are the antidote to the cognitive obstructions, but there is a sense in which it's saying that somehow the Pratyeka Buddhas are able to strive in some way in the methods to attain the Dharma body of the fully enlightened Buddha, and that they in some way are able to rely on, are supported by methods which could be the antidote to the cognitive obstructions. And yet in this text also it's saying that they don't, those Pratyeka Buddhas don't develop bodhicitta. So that presentation also there a little bit connects with the question I'm asking you about why is that only relying on emptiness alone and not conjoined or sustained by bodhicitta cannot produce the Dharmakaya. So this is your homework.
Well, also, thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rinpoche.
Okay.
Ashi perki chokche metok tram rira plinzini de gyampa sangye zingdu mikte owai druka namdak zingla chirpa shok. May my Venerable Lama's life be firm, his wide divine actions spread in the 10 directions. May the torch of the teachings of Losang always remain, dispelling the darkness of all beings in the 3 realms. Idam Guratna Mandarakam Nyayatayami. Rinpoche, we have the dedication prayers.
Okay.
Having thoroughly investigated in court with all that I've heard, day and night, through the 4 reasonings, mind born of reflection on these topics of contemplation, may this discernment sever all doubts. In a land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. In all my lives, never separated from perfect gurus, may I enjoy the magnificent Dharma by completing the qualities of ground and path. May I quickly attain the state of Vajradhara. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. I fully dedicate all these roots of virtue to the dedication praised as the best. We're also gone beyond victorious ones of the 3 times in order to have good conduct. With my heart going out with great compassion in whatever direction the most precious teachings have not yet spread or once spread have declined, may I reveal this treasury of happiness and aid. Om Swasti, may all be auspicious. O charming lady of the 7 eyes, supreme mother of this triumphant, exceptional deity skilled in bringing a great rain to fall of the actual attainments of deathless long life, positive potential and deep awareness. Please grant here and now the utmost in fulfilling the aims of my prayers by the force of your matchless dedicated heart to uphold the teachings. May you live a long life to further the essence of the deep and extensive guidelines that the able ones taught. As a Lord wielding power over the oceans of reason and speech, as a lamp for the teachings of the excellent-minded, for the sake of leading to a state of peerless, enduring bliss, all wandering beings oppressed through bondage of their compulsions and disturbing minds. May you live a long life, fulfilling all infinite hopes through the extensive deeds of your stainless 3 enigmatic gates. Your dedicated hearts once more reach out to strive in serving the triumphant one's teachings through your 3 pure rounds. I request you long to remain as a guiding light for wandering beings in accord with your will in the land of disciples in every directions. By the power of the inspiration from the host of lamas, deities, and protectors, by the force of the truth of non-fallacious dependent arising, by the strength of regard from the exceptional resolve of myself and others, may all the aims of my prayers be exactly and fully fulfilled. Thank you so much, Rinpoche, for Rinpoche's precious teachings on this very auspicious day. And since Rinpoche gave us homework, we hope that Rinpoche accepts to check our homework next time and to have another session. Please, Rinpoche, please have a long and healthy life, and please, may we have another session, many sessions with Rinpoche very soon. Please, Rinpoche.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Kumpela is very clever. Taking the advantage of what I said. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. And the homework I give to you, it's more to whenever you do your practice. So then whether this way of thinking, sometimes it can be helpful to bring doubts when if you wanted to move on. So many, normally whatever you do practice in front of your altar or in front of the holy objects, what you in front of you, doing everything as every day, it's kind of a little bit boring. So it's better to bring kind of something fresh in the market. So something fresh in your brain. So this is why this sort of sometime mind training is very important. So this is why I wanted to share, whether you want to do the homework, you want to fail, or you want to get A plus, this is your own thing. You don't need to give answer to me. Whether you have the answer to that or not, next section when Tushita will ask me to do, I will gladly do it. No problem. Okay.
Thank you, Rinpoche.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. And then today, very special day, we did a dedication, and whatever we have dedicated our virtue to the great masters, His Holiness Dalai Lama's long life. And the main reason why we wanted to see His Holiness long life and our Guru's long life is to take more advantage of their knowledge. So for that, it's not always like we request our Guru a long life and we don't do nothing. Then it's a very funny way of requesting long life to His Holiness and great lamas. So if it is the honest dedication, then we all have to do something. So we practice, even if it's only 15 minutes or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, while doing it, do it very seriously. That reach, one day, even we don't reach to fully enlightenment or liberation, but somehow we feel like I cannot reach that path, but still I have so much confidence. This is what I have spent most of the time in my life, taking the refuge in the three jewels. There's no regret in there. There's a dangerous, some people before they made Dharma, and then some people say, now I lost faith in Dharma. There's a very big, very big dangerous. I recently met a few people who even studied 20, 30 years, and then something conflict happened with their guru and something. Then they lost faith in three refuge. So something is wrong the way we when we start doing practice. So so this is it's a very, I want this part, I wanted to share it because I care about you. I don't know, I have a strong compassion towards you all, but I care about you. That's why I'm saying this. So be careful. That's it. And take care and stay healthy, and all the best to you, and see you next time.
Thank you, Rinpoche. See you very, very soon, Rinpoche. Thank you so much, Simon Love, for interpreting. Thank you so much. Very kind. I know you have a very busy schedule. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this very, very special day. Thank you so much. Thank you to our director, Pamela, who held the session. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
SED.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.